So somehow through cultural osmosis or someone directly telling you, you have this kind of feeling that by a certain age, certain things should be handled, career, relationships, money, focus, family, all that stuff, and that there's some rungs on the ladder, check marks, all that stuff that you're supposed to have done by whatever. Everyone seems to accept this, and no one really asks kind of where the list comes from. You just kind of look at people who came before you and go, well, I should probably do that. The list is entirely made up, and you know this just by looking at it, but looking at it and kind of intellectually realizing it doesn't really solve the immediate problem. So let's dive into that. I'm Eric Greentree. I make videos on creativity and about projects I'm working on, basically attempting to focus my energies on living life more deliberately in accordance with values instead of being kind of shuffled along with somebody else's game plan. Right now we're talking about the various accomplishments we're supposed to have done by certain ages, the conceptions of where you're supposed to be based on how old you are. The problem isn't really about your age per se, it's the feeling of being behind. So this feeling has a source, it's a framework, it's a cultural consensus, and it feels very solid because when we feel behind, we're kind of down on ourselves, and then our brain kind of filters out to just everyone who's doing better than us and says, look at all these successful people, they did everything right, you did everything wrong. We gotta detach, take a look at this a little bit. Not as an excuse for bad behavior or laziness, but as a reality check. And reality as it is not how people told you it was. That's how they think it is. For instance, certain landmarks like the concept of the teenager. So it was just child, and as soon as you could do enough chores, suddenly you were an adult. The concept of middle age has shifted so dramatically that what is old in a film in the 1950s is someone who is now perceived as young in a film now. What every phase means, how long it lasts, like it's been renegotiated multiple times just within my own living memory. So that little voice that says you missed your window, that you're, whatever, it's not delivering a timeless truth. It's delivering an anxiety of a particular cultural moment that is already being revised. A personal story, a few years ago when I was sitting in a conference room, the lecture was being given by a doctor who specialized in traumatic brain injuries in children. But at some point, I think we were talking about various methods of recovery and outlooks. After talking for a bit on that, answering the question, he kind of just shifted and said, well, with all people, as soon as you hit age 26, you just kind of deteriorate and there's no going back. And it was such a sudden shift that I was shocked, and I looked around and everyone else in the room was just like kind of nodding in consensus and like, oh yeah, that's totally true. And it just blew my mind because my experience has been the exact opposite. When I was 26, I was at my worst health ever. I was a homeless alcoholic. If I did not drink for more than several hours, I would have seizures. I was homeless. I never ate. The only water I got was from what was in booze, 3 rehabs in 3 different states later. I am in the best shape of my life. It blew my mind that everyone just accepts this, that you just deteriorate and there's nothing you can do about it. That's just a personal example of how I saw how infectious this notion is. So I thought about, what if we looked at age differently? It's just a little thought experiment. Like, what if instead of years, which is totally arbitrary, so what if we measured age by just how many years you were in school? So people would say, instead of, how old are you? They'd say, how old were you? And most of us would be between like 13 and 20, like PhDs are pushing into their 20s. I'm not advocating that as a scenario, as like the way we should go, but that system that I just kind of outlined is just as arbitrary as the system we have now. And how different would you have lived your life if you didn't have this nagging voice that said, oh no, I'm almost 25, I'm almost 30, I'm almost 40, oh my God. Like, if you didn't have that at all, if no one had handed you our original framework, how would you have lived differently? Whatever your answer is, that's what the clock stole from you. We know this theoretically. You can just, look at the memoir section of your local Amazon.com and find tons of stories of people who switched careers at 50 and 40 and all that stuff. And there's people who graduated college when they're 80 or 90, or high school even. And the varieties of human life are endless, and our cultural notion of where you should be is just very, very temporary. You don't need to measure yourself against it. So you can do this one thing at a time. What do I wish I had done when I was younger? And can I do a little bit of that right now? It's okay to not know things and not always be the person who is the best at everything everywhere you go. Realizing the falsity of our cultural narrative isn't exactly like permission, but you have the absence of reasons to stop you from doing things. I was at my bottom at 26. It can get so much better and stay so much better forever. And I'm now starting things I should have started years ago, trying to become more involved in the world, taking creative projects seriously instead of feeling guilty about doing them, and then feeling even worse for not doing them. This is an example, this channel is an example of me also sort of facing my discomfort about putting things in the world. This is my attempt to break out of the comfort zone and the cultural narrative. You are allowed to not know how to do things. You are allowed to iteratively improve over time, and it doesn't matter how old you are to do that. You don't need more time. You need a different clock. So, thanks for listening. See you later.